Bringing you the latest from around the world, this is NNC, Neural Newscast.
Welcome to Neural Newscast. I'm Andrew Lindbeck. On this August 22nd, 2025, we remember. On this day in 1864, Union forces continued major campaigns of the American Civil War, with significant battles and military movements shaping the conflict's final year. Now, a look at the political landscape. DHS tells states to adopt federal voting safeguards or risk losing election security grant funding. Here's Cassandra Joyce with more.
The Department of Homeland Security says states that decline new baseline elections security safeguards could lose federal grant money. The Trump administration's conditions include list maintenance standards, vulnerability testing, and post-election audits. A handful of states say they'll walk away from the funds rather than accept federal mandates. Supporters say the strings help protect voter rolls and harden systems against cyber threats. Critics in both parties call it federal overreach into state-run elections and warn the timing, months before 2025 contests, could disrupt preparations. DHS calls them basic safeguards, with guidance expected in the coming weeks.
The Supreme Court lets NIH pause nearly $800 million in grants while legal issues are reviewed. Here's Daniel Grove with more.
The Supreme Court, in a 5-4 emergency order, is allowing the National Institutes of Health to pause nearly $800 million in research grants while legal challenges play out. The court also left intact, for now, a lower court ruling that set aside internal NIH memos used to enforce administration policies. Backers say the pause is needed to review compliance and spending. Opponents warn it will idle labs and delay medical advances. The justices did not rule on the merits, and further action is expected this fall.
Governor Newsom signs a redistricting plan aimed at shifting multiple U.S. House seats toward Democrats. Here's Monica Kellen with more.
California Governor Gavin Newsom signs a redistricting plan that could help Democrats flip 5 U.S. House seats. The map sped through the Democratic-led legislature but still requires voter approval. Supporters frame it as a response to Republican-drawn maps in Texas and other states, arguing it restores fairness. Critics call it partisan gerrymandering and warn it weakens independent mapmaking. Voters will decide whether the changes take effect in upcoming elections.
South Korea's president will press for renewed U.S.-North Korea talks during an upcoming summit with Trump. Here's Ethan Wells with more.
South Korea's president plans to urge President Donald Trump to restart talks with North Korea at their first summit next week. The push revives the engagement that briefly lowered tensions in 2018 to 2019. Critics in Seoul and Washington argue Pyongyang exploits talks to advance missiles and seek sanctions relief. Supporters say dialogue can cap risks and open humanitarian channels. The debate centers on deterrence, sanctions, and step-by-step incentives on the Korean peninsula.
Indonesia names a deputy minister a graft suspect, marking a significant anti-corruption probe in the cabinet. Here's Samuel Green with more.
Indonesia has named Deputy Manpower Minister Emmanuel Ebenezer a suspect in an extortion case, officials say. He is the first sitting member of President Prabowo Subianto's cabinet under anti-corruption investigation. Supporters call such probes essential checks on power. Critics argue investigations can be politicized during high-profile cases. The government pledges due process. Legal experts note a suspect designation signals probable cause, not guilt, as the inquiry continues. This is Samuel Green for Neural Newscast.
From the World Desk, here's what's new. A global food security panel says Gaza City and nearby areas are officially experiencing famine conditions. At least 500,000 people face starvation, acute malnutrition, and a high risk of death, according to an assessment using the UN-backed IPC scale, the strictest measure of food crises. It marks the most severe level of hunger since the war began in October 2023. Aid groups cite blocked deliveries, damaged infrastructure, and continuing insecurity, and warn that rapid, sustained access is needed to prevent further mass mortality. We have more on the humanitarian picture ahead. And on the diplomatic front, here's the latest. Hamas backs a ceasefire proposal aiming to end fighting and ensure its political survival, mediators say.
You're listening to Neural Newscast. Fresh insights every day. Catch up on past episodes anytime at nnewscast.com.
Now to Colombia. At least 17 are killed in Colombia after a car bomb and a separate helicopter attack, officials say. Here's Samuel Green with more.
At least 17 people die in Colombia after two coordinated attacks on Thursday. A car bomb explodes in a populated area, and gunmen fire on a police helicopter in a separate incident. President Gustavo Petro blames FARC dissidents for both strikes, calling them an attack on peace efforts. Police officers are among the dead and injured. Authorities deploy additional troops and open a criminal investigation. The attacks test ceasefire talks with armed groups and underscore persistent insecurity in several regions. This is Samuel Green for Neural Newscast.
Business and finance stories coming up. Parents working full-time say school uniform costs force painful trade-offs and increased demand for clothing banks. Here's Ethan Wells with more.
Parents who work full-time say they still can't afford school uniforms, and demand for free clothing banks is rising. Families report cutting groceries, skipping activities, and delaying bills to buy required blazers, shoes, and PE kits. A mother of two says uniforms now cost more than her weekly food shop. Community centers in several towns see more first-time visitors this summer. Advocacy groups urge schools to loosen branded uniform rules and cap costs before September, warning the squeeze worsens child poverty and attendance.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell prepares to deliver his high-profile Jackson Hole speech that markets are watching closely. Here's Cassandra Joyce with more.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell delivers his high-profile Jackson Hole speech on Friday, setting the tone for interest rates, inflation, and growth. Markets are watching for signals on how long policy will stay restrictive after a year of elevated inflation and mixed data. Powell is expected to reinforce the 2% inflation goal and discuss the balance between taming prices and preserving a cooling labor market. Investors want clarity on the path of rates into year-end. This is Cassandra Joyce for Neural Newscast.
Now, science headlines and discoveries. Hubble has captured a detailed image of nearby spiral galaxy NGC 4689, offering fresh data on star formation. Here's Nathaniel Cohen with more.
Hubble captures a striking view of the nearby spiral galaxy NGC 4689, revealing crisp arms and dust lanes. The galaxy sits in the constellation cone of Berenices, roughly 54 million light-years away. Astronomers use these detailed images to map star formation and trace how gas flows shape spiral structure. Hubble's sharp optics isolate clusters, nebulae, and the galaxy's bright core, offering a clean laboratory for studying how galaxies evolve. This is Nathaniel Cohen for Neural Newscast.
From the Health Desk, here's what's new. In eastern Congo, survivors of sexual violence increasingly lack access to medical care as clinics shut down. Here's Laura Navarro with more.
In eastern Congo, survivors of sexual violence lose critical care as conflict shuts clinics and courts. Rebel control across large areas disrupts medical services, trauma counseling, and post-rape medication. Women and girls walk hours to the few facilities still open, often turned away. Health workers report shortages of antibiotics, emergency contraception, and HIV post-exposure drugs. Legal recourse fades as police flee and judges suspend hearings. Families face stigma, unwanted pregnancies, and untreated injuries. One nurse says, "We're choosing who to treat first." Aid groups urge safe corridors, restock clinics, and mobile teams now.
New treatments for peanut allergies show promise, but still raise questions about long-term effectiveness and monitoring. Here's Isabella Wright with more.
Peanut allergies have surged in U.S. children, and families feel the risk daily, at school, parties, even on planes. New treatments offer hope. Oral immunotherapy and skin patches gradually train the immune system, aiming to reduce severe reactions. These options don't cure allergies, and they require careful, ongoing monitoring with an allergist. Still, for many parents, a smaller reaction means a bigger life. As one clinician puts it, Desensitization buys time and confidence. This is Isabella Wright for Neural Newscast.
For a worldwide view, we turn to our international team. House Oversight prepares to receive hundreds of pages of Jeffrey Epstein files from the Trump Justice Department. Here's Jessica Palmer with more.
The Justice Department under the Trump administration begins turning over hundreds of pages on Jeffrey Epstein to House Oversight. Committee investigators say the material will start arriving in the coming days. The files include internal communications and case records tied to Epstein's criminal network. Lawmakers seek answers on how federal authorities handled Epstein before and after his 2019 arrest. The panel could use the documents to pursue interviews or hearings. One member calls the handoff a necessary step toward public accountability. This is Jessica Palmer for Neural Newscast.
For an entertainment update, here's what's new. A former Disney child star details stalking and an attempted kidnapping in a new memoir about early fame. Here's Lydia Holmes with more.
Former Disney child star Allison Stoner alleges stalkers and an attempted kidnapping in a new memoir. The book, semi-well-adjusted despite literally everything, details incidents from her early fame in Hollywood. Stoner describes safety fears, boundary violations, and pressure on young performers. She writes that constant surveillance and fan access can turn dangerous. The memoir highlights risks of child stardom and calls for stronger protections in the industry. This is Lydia Holmes for Neural Newscast.
Wrapping up. That's our coverage for this hour. For full stories and updates, visit neuralnewscast.com and follow us on your favorite podcast platform.
You have been listening to NNC. Visit nnewscast.com for more episodes and deep dives. Neural Newscast integrates real and AI-generated voices to facilitate efficient, high-quality news production. Developed by human experts, our AI-generated content undergoes rigorous fact-checking and human review before publication. While we strive for accuracy and neutrality, AI-generated content may occasionally contain errors. We encourage listeners to verify crucial details from reliable sources. For more on our AI transparency practices, visit newscast.com.